Hi guys, it's Christy, and I want to welcome you to this mini class on writing well-formed affirmations. I'm going to take no time discussing who I am, what I do, anything like that, because if you've been with me for any length of time, you kind of know what I do. And if you don't, technically by listening to this mini class, you're going to figure out just a little bit about what I do. So I'm just going to dive right in. Affirmations, prayers, positive suggestions, hypnotic suggestions. They're all names for achieving goals and changing limiting beliefs. Affirmations can have a major impact on the quality of your life, but why is it that some people achieve their goals and some people don't? We tend to have these recurring thoughts, right? These recordings, these playbacks and programs and patterns that are going on in our minds. These programs, patterns, recordings, whatever it is that you want to call them, they were created in our childhood, created by our families, our friends, teachers, people of importance, even ourselves. And when people we trust tell us the same message over and over and over again, our unconscious mind, like the faithful servant that it is, tries to recreate, reenact, do exactly what we tell it. So we try our hardest to change these bad recordings and programs and patterns into good ones by using affirmations. But most of the time, people use affirmations that are too long, too awkward, or difficult to remember. They say the affirmations once or twice a day and then forget about it. In the end, your affirmations have no power. After all, if someone told you a single time that you were beautiful or magnificent or something like that, you wouldn't believe them. Just like if someone told you you were, uh, dumb or blonde-headed even when you're a brunette, you wouldn't believe them, right? It would take constant repetition in order for your brain to start believing that. And so repeating an affirmation or a positive statement or suggestion once a day is really not going to cement it in your mind for you and make it a foundational belief that you have. So when you're not doing this repetition, when you're saying these things to yourself only once, it's no wonder that affirmations don't really work. But doctors and scientists now firmly believe that 75% of all sickness and disease starts in the mind. Imagine what would happen if you utilized your mind to its fullest potential. You'd stop getting sick, you'd live healthier, more productive life. And research has shown and proven that people who have a healthy and positive outlook and attitude live better lives. Why is that? Because they know how to use the power of their mind. Unfortunately, the majority of us don't really take advantage of their own powerful mind. Instead, they just let their mind run rampant, do what it wants to do, start repeating these things that it's always repeated, and it basically works against them. It creates things that they don't want. The saying goes, do the same thing, get the same result. So let's talk about it, right? Let's talk about the initial creation of a positive, well-formed affirmation. To develop an effective affirmation, prayer, suggestion, goal, mantra, whatever it is that you want to call it, what do you do first? Well, the first things first, right? Let's get clear about what you want. So write down what it is that you want. Don't worry about how it sounds or perfecting the wording, right? The question is what is the problem? What would you like to do or be? Write that down, and you'll refine it later. So here are some questions to ask yourselves to help you get clear, right? Gain clarity, figure out exactly what it is that you want. What is your problem? Structure the question so that it is precise and speaks to one issue, not two or three. What do you want? How will you know when you have what you want? What will be the evidence? Be as concrete as you can. Statements like, I'll feel better or I'll just know are too vague. The next question to ask yourself is, can you do it? Right? Can you initiate and maintain this process? And the last question, when, where, and with whom do you want this? So you may have heard of a term called homeostasis, right? This is the tendency for us to go back to what is known. It's the tendency to find balance, right? If your blood sugar gets too high, your body strives to maintain homeostasis, and it releases insulin to bring your blood sugar down. If your blood pH gets too high, it will liberate some of the minerals in your tissues and in your bones to help offset some of your acidity. So this homeostatic pull, right, it's kind of a seesaw, is the tendency for us to go back to what we know, what we've done, even if it's not the best thing for us, right? We're comfortable with what is familiar and known, even if it sucks, even if we hate it, even if it makes us unhappy. The truth is that it's a known and it's survivable, right? And our human lizard brain monkey mind is only really interested in our survival. So in creating affirmations, we have to take into account how we benefit from keeping this undesired behavior. So here are some more questions to ask yourself as you develop your well-formed affirmation. If you get what you want, will you lose something you have now? Right? Will someone be upset with you? Will someone leave? Will you lose something like a job, or respect, or money, or whatever it is? Sometimes people say that they would rather stay in a difficult situation than to give up the prospect of complaining about it, right? For some people that gets them attention, it gets them, you know, people commiserate with them on their problem. Sometimes, complaining and feeling sorry for yourself is a secondary gain. So figure out what it is for you that's keeping you staying in this place where you're keeping what you don't want. How do you benefit by what you do now, right? How do you benefit by staying where you are? This one really applies, it applies across the board, but you may see this one in, let's say, physical ailments. What's the benefit of having migraines? A lot of people will say, well, nothing, Christy. There's no benefit to having a migraine. And I want you to examine, what do you get to do, have to do, not have to do by having the problem? By, for instance, having migraines, you may not have to go to work. You may not have to do chores. You may have someone else who helps to take care of you when you have migraines. If you, for instance, keep your emotional eating habits, right? And I mention this because this is kind of the overarching thing of what I do, is dealing with emotional eating habits and helping people resolve those issues. But keeping your emotional eating, right, how does that benefit you? Well, it allows you to eat, hyper palative, right, which is good tasting, super good tasting food anytime you want. If you're emotional eating, then you might not be eating chocolate cake and donuts and chips and salsa and cheeseburgers and french fries and milkshakes and all of those things, right? So there is something that you might stand to lose by giving up your undesired behavior. How will this new desired state change your life? What negative things would happen, what positive things would happen. Most of us only really try and focus on the positive things, although we think about those positive aspects in a very generic and vague way. But I want you to weigh both sides of this equation, right? What negative things will happen and what positive things will happen. Next question is, how will you feel when you achieve this? Right? This is touching in. Will you feel excited? Will you feel relieved? Will you feel elated? Um, will you feel lighter? Will you feel freedom? Right? So really touch in and see what it is that you will feel when you achieve this. And then broaden that out to your other senses and think about and write down what your life will look like when this happens. Right? When you get what you want, what's your life going to be like? What are you going to be doing differently? So at this point, you might have a goal that is a paragraph or two that takes into account all of these different aspects. In fact, you may have written pages. When I do this, I have a tendency to write pages. And that's perfect. Whatever you've got is perfect. Now is the time to refine your goal to be the most effective. So the idea is to keep it simple but specific. So we live in a society of needs and wants. Right? The grass is always greener on the other side of the fence, which is not necessarily true, but we always focus and want the things we don't have. And that's understandable. But when developing our well-formed affirmations, it's important to keep them short and to the point. So keep your affirmation limited to as few words as possible. At most, a well-formed goal, right, can be a sentence or two, right? Not a paragraph and definitely not pages. Your unconscious mind is very similar to a child, right? Very childlike. And the child can only process so much information before its attention gets lost, and it can't remember it. Simple, specific affirmations are easier to memorize and simpler to process by the unconscious mind. The next aspect of this is to be positive. Commonly, people's goals sound like the following. I'm going to try and lose weight. I want to stop being tired all the time. Or, I don't want to have headaches anymore. What's wrong with these affirmations? Each is stated in the negative. Your unconscious mind can't distinguish between positive and negative. It just acts on what you give it. It doesn't have the same sort of judgments that your conscious mind does. So let's explore this a little bit further. Whatever you do, right this second, don't think about a purple elephant. Just keep any image of a great big purple elephant out of your mind. Take some time. Just do that right now, right? Don't think about that purple elephant. What happened? Right? The minute I said purple elephant, you had an image of a purple elephant, even if it only flashed in there for a second and you thought, oh crap, I have to get this out of my head because she's going to say, don't think about it. That's how the mind works. It has to think of the something before it can think of the not something. This is demonstrated when you give a child a glass of milk and say, don't spill the milk. What's the first thing that happens? They spill the milk. Because you have to think about spilling the milk before you can think about not spilling the milk. That's exactly how your mind's working too. So when you think about your well-formed affirmation, when you're writing it down, always state it in the positive. Instead of saying, I don't want to be poor, say, I am wealthy. Instead of saying lose weight, try saying something like letting go of the pounds or releasing the pounds. I like to think of releasing the pounds into the wild for all those people who might actually need them. Or even better, just say easily let go of the pounds or the excess weight or the emotional eating habits. So the next aspect of creating a well-formed affirmation is keeping it in the present tense. So keep the phrasing of your affirmation, your prayer, your suggestion in the present tense. People often use the word will, but when you use will have, you keep the results in the future. And we don't want the results to be in the future. We want them to be now. We want them, in fact, we want them to be yesterday. So phrase it in such a way that it sounds as if it's happened or have already happened. Instead of saying, I will find a new job, say, I now have a new job. It might sound strange because you might not actually have a job right now, but your unconscious will believe it and do what it can to manifest and make it happen. So the next aspect of a well-formed affirmation is to eliminate the tries. If you're sitting down right now, try to stand up. If you're standing up, try to sit down. Were you successful? No. Why is that? As a famous puppet once said, do or do not, there is no try. And I think it was actually attributed to Yoda. But you are either standing or sitting, or perhaps you're moving, right, driving or transitioning from sitting to standing, but there is no try. You're either doing it or not doing it. So the idea here is to remove the tries from your aspiration or your affirmation. Right? You don't want to try to do better. You don't want to try to lose weight. You don't want to try to get a new job. You don't want to try to get more money or make more money. You will do it. I will lose weight. Right? I am losing weight. I will make more money. I am making more money. Do you feel the difference in that? Right? When you say try, you're able to let yourself out of it. If you don't accomplish it, not that big of a deal. And if you're going to sit down and be writing out a well-formed affirmation, right, this is probably going to be something that you actually want to accomplish. So make sure that you're stating it positively in the present and eliminate your tries. So now let's talk about turbocharging, right, this suggestion or this affirmation. And this is going to be a little bit, I'm bringing you information out of my hypnosis training at this point, because we're going to be using, or what this is based on, is the law of suggestion. So now that you've refined your goal, it's time to put it into action. So going back in time, this is sort of a little history lesson for you. In the late 1800s, a French pharmacist and psychotherapist studied hypnotic techniques and formulated the laws of suggestion. Using these laws and well-formed suggestions will get you what you want much faster than you can believe. So the law of concentrated attention states that whenever attention is concentrated on an idea over and over again, it spontaneously tends to realize itself. And what that means is, say, it's basically the law of repetition, right? Repetitive radio and television commercials cause people to buy the product. Doing your multiplication tables is another example, right? How many times did you sit there and memorize and repeat and memorize and recite and repeat your multiplication tables? That's how come you know them. This is even more effective than persuasion because critical faculties are reduced. And what that means is you think, the more you see it, and the more you do it and the more you repeat it, the more habit it becomes. You get into a habit of seeing it, habit of thinking it, habit of feeling it, habit of having it and eating it and whatever it is. So there are numerous ways to repetitively focus your attention, both consciously and unconsciously, on your goal. If you take your goal, write it down on a post-it note and stick it to your mirror, you'll read your goal every day. If you put a copy of your goal in your pocket every day, you'll obviously have it with you and you can read it there. Each time you reach into your pocket, you remember it, you reinforce it, and the realization of your goal will start to happen. Some people even have methods of associating a specific goal with a smell, sometimes called aromatherapy. Every time you smell that smell, right? You reinforce the realization of that goal. And olfactory is a sense that a lot of people don't pay attention to, but it's extremely powerful. If you think about someone, let's say you go into a department store and you smell a perfume and it reminds you of that person, right? That is your brain's program, right, for that smell. So I definitely highly suggest you do that. The goal will register consciously and unconsciously based on how often you see it, read it, smell it, hear it, feel it, or taste it. Right? So incorporate as many of your senses as you possibly can. The law of reversed effect states that the harder you try to do something, the less chance you have of success, which seems a little bit counterintuitive, but trying to recall someone's name, for instance, can often be a really difficult task. Regardless of how you will yourself to remember that person's name, you can't do it. It seems like whenever your imagination and your will are utilized, the imagination supersedes the will. That's why you want to remove the tries from your goal. Another example of this is when you have something really important to say and you forget. You find the person you want to tell it to, and then you can't remember what it was you were going to say. And you think on it, and you think on it, and you think on it, you can't remember, and you go, it'll come to me. And you move on, right? You start thinking about something else. You start doing something else. And then, bingo, light bulb. And it comes back to you, and you go, yes, that's what it was. And then you go and tell them. So the idea here is the more you try to remember it, the harder you're going to, the harder you work at it, the less successful you're going to be. So try not to think about it too much. The law of dominant effect plays an important role in enabling suggestions to be received in a more meaningful manner. It's based on the idea that a strong emotion tends to replace a weaker one. So attaching a strong emotion to a suggestion tends to make that suggestion or affirmation more effective. That's why when you are building your affirmation, you need to feel it, right? Get out of your head and into your heart and into your body and feel what it would feel like to have it, right? The stronger you can feel those feelings, those sensations in your body, the more likely they are to stick, right? So when a person is having, say, a pleasurable experience, but there is danger imminent, right, the stronger emotion of danger will replace the former pleasure, which will basically disappear if the danger is pronounced. So the more you emotionally charge your affirmation, the more it will dominate your conscious and unconscious mind. Okay, so I just want to summarize and wrap this thing up. I'm getting really close to the time I wanted to limit this class to. Creating your well-formed affirmation, right? We want it to be short. We want it to be simple. We want it to be specific. We want it to be positive. We want it to be stated in the present tense. We want to eliminate our tries. And then we want to, as we implement it, we want to utilize, right, the power of suggestion. We want to utilize the laws of repetition, right? The more often we do it, the more believable it will become to us. We want to focus our attention on it, and but we want to not try so hard about it. We want to make sure that our well-formed affirmation has a lot of positive, good feelings, right? Good emotions attached to it to help it cement it into our brains. And every time you say your affirmation, see your affirmation, hear your affirmation, do the best that you can to feel the feelings and the sensations that go along with it, and that will go a long way in helping you to suggest to yourself, right, and implement and cement in there your positive affirmation. Okay, so using all of these things, Together, you should be able to create a well-formed positive affirmation that you can use on a daily basis. With this mini class, I am including a worksheet to help you create your well-formed affirmation. I encourage you to go download that now, do the work, and then I would love, right? Send me an email, hit me up on Facebook. I would love to hear your well-formed affirmation. And if you have any struggles with this, let me know, and hopefully I can help you turn some of your language around so that you can get the well-formed affirmation that you're looking for, which will help you achieve the goals and dreams and aspirations that you have in mind for yourself. Thanks so much, and I will talk to you guys soon.